Welcome to the new episode of our podcast On the Spot, Zooming in the World. My name is Jovan Jovanovic. I'm former Serbian ambassador to Indonesia and ASEAN, and also former member of parliament. I have a great honor and pleasure to host today my former colleague from the General Military Fund of the United States and my dear friend, Michal Baranowski. Thank you, Michal, for kindly accepting my invitation.
Jovan, it's great to be with you.
Today we will discuss three topics, three issues. One is the recent NATO summit in DC. The second issue is an increasing Poland's role in the European defense. And finally is this week's a little bit secretive visit of Ukrainian Foreign Minister Kuleba to China. So let's start with the NATO summit. Michal, you had the chance to attend the 75th anniversary of NATO and all surrounding events, NATO Public Forum, etc. And it's not for the first time, for the many years before. So what is your, now from 2-week distance, what is your assessment of the summit, of the atmosphere? Was it overshadowed by the internal US politics with the upcoming US elections? And what were the major decisions? In short, what's next? What were the major decisions and what's next for NATO?
You know, it's incredible how much has happened over the last 2 weeks since the summit. And it in many ways shows how much the US internal politics, the campaign are overshadowing the decision of the summit itself, because it is in the end a summit that celebrates 75 years of NATO's history. He's talking about unity, he's talking about US leadership, which is very much now on display when it comes to the presidential election. And of course, the critical decisions when it comes to the current events focused on support for Ukraine militarily, but also building up infrastructure, institutional infrastructure to carry on this relationship forward. But even that, I think, in some ways, is put on a question mark given the presidential election. So it's really quite incredible how US especially is focused on its domestic politics. We can talk about specific decisions because that's certainly very important. I mean, on Ukraine and Ukraine package, there has really been a lot. Not only the words in the communique that focused on irreversible path of Ukraine to join the alliance, but also very concrete decision when it comes to missile defense support, having additional 5 batteries of Patriots or similar systems being passed to Ukraine. Clear statements from US administration, including Secretary Blinken at the forum you mentioned that the GMF organized, talking about F-16s flying over Ukraine later this year, the 43 billion military package, but also a creation of new headquarters in Germany that will coordinate run by a 3-star general that will coordinate all this aid to Ukraine, and a creation of a civilian post NATO representative in Kiev. So this is the big part, the big piece of the summit that focus on Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that the NATO summit effectively addressed the criticism that NATO till now has overpromised but underdelivered to Ukraine?
Well, it's very concrete answers to this question. Now, many experts who were at the conference, and many Ukrainians as well, the comments were the following. What Ukraine is getting is absolutely critical, very badly needed, and Ukrainians are thankful for that. But given the onslaught that Russia is waging, the bombing of the hospital right before the NATO summit started, is this a real change in strategy that would shift the alliance support and American support in many ways from supporting Ukraine as long as it takes to a strategy that basically says no, NATO is going to give Ukraine as much as it needs to win the peace with Russia. In the end, it's very clear that there will have to be an agreement, but an agreement that needs to be done on Ukrainian terms. And I would say that despite the robustness of this package, it's not something that is clear. NATO has really made this strategic shift toward giving Ukraine all it needs to on Russia to in the end create situation for a just peace in this war.
Mm-hmm. And having served in the Pacific and Indonesia and being responsible for many countries in the region and ASEAN as well, I'm also interested in this desire of NATO to strengthen its presence in the Indo-Pacific and strengthen relations with the IP4 countries, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. And some of the countries in that region, particularly India, are wary of this intent. So, and also I would say that some European partners could be wary of the relocation of resources to the Indo-Pacific or Europe, especially Poland. So how would you assess this decision?
So you're right that was very important. Besides Ukraine and deterrence and defense, in the Pacific, the relations with democratic partners there, the AP4 especially, was very present at the summit. And that it really comes with a simple recognition that the European security, that the European theater cannot be and is not detached from other strategic competitions, both in the Middle East, which was to some extent present, but especially in the Pacific. And something that was very clearly also pronounced in the statement is that the Chinese role in supporting Russia in its war against Ukraine. That has never been as obviously stated as it was during this summit communiques. But it's not a situation that NATO is moving in the Pacific. NATO is connecting with the partners there. We are learning from each other. The biggest investment that is so far right now blocked is having a NATO coordination office in Tokyo, Japan. But NATO as an alliance will not take responsibility for security in the Pacific, will not get engaged directly as an alliance if something goes bad, for example, around the Taiwan Strait.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's move now to the second question. Since you are from Poland and you're based in Warsaw, about increasing Poland's role in European defense, and this Russian aggression of Ukraine just put Poland in the spotlight for many reasons, because the geostrategic location, being part of the most important part of the eastern flank, NATO's eastern flank, and then there is an increased spending. There has been increased spending on GDP on defense. Poland reached, I think, 4% mark. But it's also a combination not only of the increased spending, I would say also Polish strategic vision. So can you expand a bit more on this increasing Polish role? And even a few days ago, Chatham House published a comment that Poland could be a rising star on European defense and security.
Well, Poland has, I would agree with that. Poland has already showed its weight both within the alliance, both in NATO and in European Union. And this is where this comes from, the two main factors, that being very serious about security and defense, spending 4% already and going higher. This is not going to decrease, but going higher. So militarily committed, taking the threats very seriously, and doing our modernization program is most dynamic in Europe. On the other hand, or on the other, at the same time, a government, especially after the October 15th election, that is committed European partner that wants to work closely both with France, Germany, Italy, other countries also in our region, Sweden, Finland, the Baltic states, and of course is reaching out transatlantically. So it's the political way that comes at the same time that is recognized, and that's something that is happening where our region has become more than a flank, but really a front line for the alliance in this struggle against Russia, with only Ukraine standing between us and the Russian forces.
Mm-hmm. So I would say that Poland in the past was a bit hesitant to bolster EU defense initiative, but that now it's more inclined toward harmonizing EU and NATO's capabilities.
Absolutely. There is no question about this. Mm-hmm. There is the whole debate over European strategic autonomy is in the back mirror. Also because it's very clear that Europe will have to do more when it comes to its own defense, when it comes to defense of Ukraine, no matter who wins in November in the United States. Mm-hmm. But it could be a win of a candidate that is talking about cutting down aid to Ukraine and perhaps lowering US engagement in European defense. So this possibility is both real and very imminent. Mm-hmm. So Poland, along with especially Weimar countries, with Germany and France, are trying to build up a quick European defense capabilities, European Defense Fund, using the European Peace Facility, but at the same time focusing even more on our own national capacities and making sure that NATO is not going anywhere. This is why there will be this strong support both for NATO and European defense efforts at the same time. Basically there is a recognition in Warsaw that the time is short to fix our European defense after decades of underspending across the continent.
Mm-hmm. I would appreciate also if you can say a few words about Poland's support to Ukraine regarding the training of the military personnel or connected with the military-industrial complex in Ukraine.
Yeah, so first it comes with the recognition in Poland, without any doubt, and across the political spectrum, that Ukrainian fight against Russian aggression is existential, not only for Ukrainian security, but for our security. So this is understood by the political class, it's understood by society, and that's why you have such a strong and united effort. So Poland, beginning of the war, was one of the bigger countries that donated the biggest amount of military aid, assessed by Minister Sikorski to be $9 billion, but also was, which is much higher percentage of GDP than many of our Western allies, and close to what the Baltic states, which gave even more when it comes to the percentage of their GDP. Okay. Poland is going to host both the training mission for Ukrainian forces and also a new JTEC command, which will be placed in Bydgoszcz, a place where the NATO and Ukrainian forces will exchange best practices. Us as the alliance learning about how they fought this war. On the other hand, Ukrainians directly learning from NATO about how NATO fights. So you have a country that is fully committed militarily and politically to support Ukraine fight against aggressive Russia.
Mhm. Thank you. And last but not least, let's move to the last question about this week's visit of Ukrainian foreign minister to China. This is the first visit after the Russian aggression started, and I would appreciate if you can a little bit decipher this visit, because it's a bit secretive, and it's stated that the main topic is to search for the ways how Russian aggression could end and how China can contribute to achieving this just and stable peace. So what's behind that visit, in the statement?
Well, I think this is, frankly, best question, of course, the Ukrainian side, the Ukrainian MFA. But looking from the outside on this, on one hand, it is clear that given China's weight and given Chinese support for Russia, China will be an important player in creating conditions for real conversations and some real openness from the Russian side when it comes to negotiations. So I think that's probably what stands behind this attempt or behind this conversation. An important player that is deeply involved in the war and has some influence over Russia. But I hope that everyone who deals with China does it with eyes very wide open, that it is a country that is not impartial, but is deeply involved on the Russian side. We know, and we have this in the communique also, the NATO, it's providing Russia not maybe directly weapons, because China has not yet fully crossed this line, but enough of a dual-use technology that enables Russia to continue the fight at the level that is doing it. So it's a key enabler of this war. China is not neutral, not standing aside, but is clearly engaged on the Russian side of this war. Sees it, I'm sure, just as us as a bigger fight, not only over Ukrainian territory, but over the future of international system. So not knowing all the details, I would hope that this is something that has also been very clearly communicated by the Ukrainian side to Chinese. And I keep my fingers crossed that China can change its course, or at least get engaged in perhaps influencing Russia to come to the table with some reasonable conditions.
Michal, thank you so much for this interesting conversation, for your in-depth analysis. You have vast experience in the issues we discussed, and I wish you every success in your future endeavors. And I thank to the viewers for following our podcast.